I'm Dave Brocta from the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health. And I think anyone who has an interest in the genetic phenomena of selfish elements will really get a lot out of this meeting, whether you're interested in basic genetic mechanisms, evolutionary biology, or technology development and how these things might be applied for solving real world problems. I think anyone with any of those interests will gain a lot from this meeting and potentially meet some people who will be good collaborators in the future in where you may not have met those people before because of the nature of this meeting.
We're going to be talking about people doing natural gene drives and artificial gene drives, but also it's going to be a confluence of people working on mechanisms and people working on models and people working on theory. So I think there's going to be a lot gained. People working at the modeling level for natural elements will have a lot in common with the modelers who are working on synthetic elements, and those working on mechanism will have a lot in common, whether they're working on one or the other system. So we expect there to be very interesting high-level conversations between those folks.
And I'll just add that I do think it's very important to learn from these systems that already exist in nature and how they affect the evolutionary trajectory of the populations that they're in. And there are a lot of people who are working on this and thinking really hard about it. And I'm hoping that those folks will come to this meeting and we'll get some cross-fertilization of ideas, and that people working on natural selfish genetic elements can start, maybe thinking about practical applications that they hadn't really thought of before.
We've had meetings of people working on natural gene drives and meetings, people working on synthetic drives for application. But I think this meeting will enable a lot of synergies. I don't know what those synergies will exactly be, but having these two groups coming together, I think that we'll learn from each other a lot. And I think that's what we see as being this outcome of this meeting, is that maybe everybody will go away with some new ideas.
I think some of the really interesting developments that you'll hear about on with respect to using genetic elements as controls come, I think, from the field of synthetic biology, where we really take inspiration from the findings from what is coming out of the genetic elements community about the mechanisms and the dynamics of these elements and how they behave within species and within ecosystems, to use those elements to try to manage these species, in particular pests, invasive species or pests in agriculture. Certainly mosquitoes have been the primary initial target for the development of gene drives, and certainly are closest in terms of a technology actually being considered for deployment into the field. More recently, we've been interested in the possibility of using gene drives to control invasive vertebrate pest species, such as mice on islands is a primary target. At the moment, we're also interested in Australia about the possibility of controlling rabbits, foxes, feral cats.
In the past few years, we've seen really huge advances in what we understand about the mechanisms that naturally occurring selfish genetic elements use to cheat, and how the hosts that they live in defend themselves against these cheaters. So you're going to hear the latest on the selfish strategies that we know about and see in nature. So there are selfish genetic elements that cheat through meiosis in females. There are sperm killers in males and spore killers in fungi, and you'll hear about all of these. You're also going to hear about population dynamics of systems that exist in nature. And the approaches are going to range from molecular biology and genetics to evolutionary biology and ecology to modeling. So it'll be diverse both in topics and approaches in thinking about naturally occurring selfish genetic elements.
Is that we are really trying to find new approaches and new mechanisms, and we do get inspiration from the natural elements. And one of the things about the application of gene drives is that there's the earliest kind of approaches that have been somewhat successful, at least in the laboratory, are ones where the gene drive continues to increase in frequency and spread. And this has led to a lot of public concern about whether this could cause extinction of species and what would be the ecological ramifications. So I think one of the real cutting edge parts of gene drive research right now in terms of application is the idea of coming up with gene drives that are either spatially or temporally limited. So you could have an effect on a population, but only for a specific amount of time or in a smaller area. So you wouldn't have those ecological problems.
I would think that the meeting would actually be really interesting for a number of different stakeholder groups that are interested in the control of pest species or invasive species, such as people who work in public health, or even people who work in the conservation space who are feel challenged by the methods that are available at the moment for the control of invasive species. And so I think it would be great to have people in attendance coming from the end user side who would add, I think, tremendous value to the debate and to the conversations that we have about the potential utility of these, and to bring up their concerns that they may have, or even the excitement they might have about the opportunities or the risks associated with any type of new technology.
Because of what we're trying to accomplish with this meeting compared to many others, I think being in person is so critical. So if it's at all possible to have a meeting in person and be there, this could really enhance the meeting. So much can be done, with Zoom and everything else these days, but it's not the same as meeting somebody and actually being able to have coffee with them or do something. And we talked about the controversial nature of some of these things. I think some of the conversations in hallways about these kind of things and the building of trust is so much easier in person. And I think that this meeting can accomplish that.